Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. Ramadan Mubarak. This screenshot that I shared in the beginning has been quite common as I've seen on the Twitter X platform. And the quartering, from my understanding, Jeremy is his name. I've watched him for quite some time. He does not spark me as somebody who is religious or profoundly Christian. So when he says Paris has fallen without a single shot being fired simply because Muslims are praying outside during Ramadan, I question his sincerity. Because we do know that rage bait, click farming gets you revenue on Twitter. You get money with how much people engage with your content. I've come to study this and learn it and see how the game is played. The algorithm, you're able to play with it. I'm shadow banned, so I don't play that game. But on Twitter, I don't have like my public profile on there. I'm an anon on Twitter, obviously. But I get to see how they do it. And one thing I notice is that when you put posts like this, you can't talk like that against the Jays, right? You can't do that. It's not allowed. But when you go against Muslims, it gets you so much money. And one thing is that I don't get about Jeremy from the quartering is that he complains and posts videos of liberal degeneracy, right? He started switching his content to talk more about like the dating scene. So he'll have like a really pretty bimbo being interviewed on the street and she says something stupid. And then he'll do like a 30-second clip of responding to it. You know, typical stuff that gets you trending. And it's ironic to me that he'll complain about degeneracy, but then get mad at public prayer. Now, Harris Snelton, he gets very upset when people pray outside. I remember he posted on X joy when some Muslims in India were getting kicked while they were praying in the street. I get that you should pray to the side, don't block traffic. People gotta go where they gotta go. Don't be obnoxious, have common courtesy. And people gotta get to work and stuff, so obviously don't block traffic. But it does surprise me when people get... I've made several videos on this, by the way. If you go through the vlog playlists, I talk about public prayer. And I don't see anything really wrong with it. For example, as I mentioned in the past, you have this law that California decriminalized loitering for sex work so that officers cannot question you as to why you're loitering on the street corner. And this has allowed women to be in thongs and have basically walk around in bikinis advertising street sex in neighborhoods. And people can't do anything about it, and I've shared videos of that. You just have to kind of keep up to date on that. And it has become a problem. So if liberals allow that, why then does it make sense to get mad at public prayer? People pausing, calming their breathing, are doing something good. Like, would you get mad at public Buddhist meditation or public yoga? Why then would you get mad at public prayer? And I recall I don't remember if it was in England or America, but there was a woman who was praying outside an abortion clinic and she got arrested. She was simply praying across the street from an abortion clinic, and people like Jeremy were saying how horrible it is that a woman is being arrested for praying outside of an abortion clinic. And that puzzles me. So you want to have Christians be allowed to pray publicly because they're not hurting anyone, but when Muslims pray in public, that's not allowed. But if you want to do public goat yoga, in our community there are upper echelon liberal women who do goat yoga, and there's like goats all around and they're doing yoga, and sometimes the goats jump on their backs or stuff. It's just fun. And that's allowed. I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, actually, I should say this. They're in tight clothes. You could say it's a fitna. They're doing something gymnastic-y in public, so they should do that privately. As a Muslim, that's what we would say. But what I'm trying to get at here is you're allowed to do downward facing dog in these sort of Kama Sutra-esque poses. That's fine because it's satisfying the male gaze. But when men are praying and not hurting anyone, this somehow means that Paris has fallen. And I would like to note to these people like Jeremy, they have harassed Muslim women and made it harder for them to wear our religious clothing in public. Further, France has banned men from having paternity testing for their women. So France is an atheist republic that, Macron married. Just look up Macron and his wife. The age gap between them, how they met, and others have pointed out, the gait, the stride, the mannerisms, the body structure, the way in which Mrs. Macron sits is very masculine, and others have pointed out how they actually think that's a trans. I think I'm in favor of such an opinion, but I don't want to be too rude. It's Ramadan, but there's something to be said there. But look at the history of France, how they've treated religious people, the Jacobins, and see how they riot in a different way. It's something to be said there. So I don't think it's fair to say France has fallen because Muslims are praying during Ramadan. Would you prefer open whoredom or prayer? But atheists, as I've said in the past, they're very hedonistic, they're very slimy, they are very beastly. They mock the Huri al-Ain in Islam, yet they love brothel culture on earth. And the Huri al-Ain aren't prostitutes who are passed around to hundreds and hundreds of men on the hour. So it always surprises me the hypocrisy of atheists who will openly endorse sex work. OnlyFans, escorting, you name it, they're totally for it. They're so for women being passed around that they deny men the right to even know if their children are theirs. That's how much France protects the harlot. So in a place like that, where they've been famous even since before the 17th century for their whoredoms, if you read what John Adams thought about the women of France, he didn't want that kind of culture to come to America. Although they said, Benjamin Franklin did like that behavior. But even the founding father, John Adams, was like, I don't think we really like this decadent French woman behavior. And culturally, maybe not as much today, but France was really famous for the red dress, blonde with red lipstick harlot. And there's common French sayings of like, the French whore loves intimacy so much, it's like trying to keep a fish out of water. And you can call that misogyny or whatever, but just the fact that they have a cultural history that spans years upon years of the lewdness of their women goes to show you France fell because of atheism. Didn't fall because men are being spiritual publicly. If America has a huge gang problem, imagine if you could get men to be more spiritual, start fearing their maker, and not committing violent crimes. That would actually be good. Quite good. Religion, in my opinion, makes countries stronger. Atheism has proven to be disastrous because it's a conglomerate and mesh pot of different philosophies coming together that rub against one another and create friction and factions that undermine the stability of the nation. And the only way it can be held together is with a communistic iron fist that's authoritarian, because you can't have these different competing confederacies of ideas coming and waging war for hegemony. And so when you are a united front under the religious umbrella, that makes you become more organized because your law is already codified and you have something to build upon. Whereas France, they can scapegoat the immigrants all they want, but their women are quite different than ours, and they simply think because they have the romance genre historically in their literature and then cinema that they are somehow more civilized. I just don't agree with that. And so countries have to come to terms with, if they're going to be warmongers who are bloodthirsty, with the corpses of thousands of children under their boots, and then expect no one to move out of the hellholes they made, I find that to be quite bizarre. And France used to have lots of Catholics, right? And Madeline is a classic children's story, and there was a nun with all the little girls with the Eiffel Tower. So it is quite bizarre how France struggles with the religious roots and with the atheist republic coming into mind, these sort of secular values. Macron is a pretty creepy guy, in my opinion. I mean, it does look strange that he would pick a woman that grotesque, you know? I'm not saying he's loyal to that she-man, but it's just something ain't right there. Just the whole relationship of how it's on record to have stated in the age gap, it just looks highly suspect. But again, atheists are, when you examine them, really into drag. Matt Dillahunty is really into, like, now he's a gender pronoun crusader. He likes drag queens, he's dated trans, and it's different if you say something political like, they pay taxes, leave them alone, and it's quite different when you pornify them. And I just think that just shows the maliciousness, because you've permanently put them in a caste system of sex objects instead of human beings, as the atheists try to portray with their humanistic philosophy. And so, much could be said there, but my point is, Paris has not fallen simply because Muslims are praying during Ramadan. It's great to see discipline of the spiritual nature. And if it was a bunch of monks, they wouldn't say that. You know, and it always surprises me how a lot of people like the Quartering, they won't go after Hindus putting their faces in cow poop. Or I saw one Hindu lady, she bit the head off of a chicken while it was alive. I saw another one where they threw a goat into a flame pit alive and it came out burning. So they may be nice to cows, but there's something very strange in that area, but they don't touch that. Or the Babas, you know, smoking so much weed and just rambling and living like they're in a permanent state of bohemian, hippie, Burning Man vortexes, right? There's so much that could be said there, but they don't. And they don't touch the Jays. Neither do the atheists. The atheists won't go after the Jays. Especially Sam Harris, because he is one. And it just further shows you that they don't really hate religion in the same sense. Like, they'll burn Bibles, eat Qurans, tear up Qurans. But Harris Sultan, those types, they can say, oh, Paris has fallen. Quartering can say Paris has fallen. But they'll never attack the Jays. And the funny thing is that when you can't criticize, like, the Abrahamic faiths, just isolate one. Like, they'll mock the pillars of Islam, and some of those pillars are in the other two faiths. And you're like, okay, you singled out Christians and you singled out Muslims, but why haven't you gone there? It's because they actually have fear, and they're not as bold as they think they are. You could not have an entire channel dedicated to attacking Judaism. Okay, so if an atheist is actually trying to get rid of religion, no religion would be off target. Further, Jeremy from the Quartering, he's never mentioned anything against the occultists. That always surprises me. I talked about this in the past. The atheists will never attack the occultists. I always found that suspicious. So the people who do weird things to animals constantly, who have feces in their ritual, doing strange things in coffins and graveyards, and cutting people's backs and licking the blood off and doing blood rituals, funny, they don't mention that. But they'll go against some people praying publicly in Ramadan. I always found that quite suspicious. Quite suspicious. Because it shows you, if you were an actual atheist warrior, you would be pushing Darwinism, most likely, right? Evolution, the Big Bang Theory, and you would have an entirely different creed, because in your creed, only thing that is real is right now. So without God, anything is permissible. And you prop up, oh, we have Immanuel Kant here, we're going to take some rules from over here, we're going to take some rules from over here, and we're going to put them in a pot and shake it up, and then what's our ethics for today? It's just a very different system. And that's why I was mentioning China the other day, because atheists will be like, well, that's not true atheism. So they'll deny how the communists will have an atheistic regime and will rule by something different, by the human mind's philosophical calendar. But then they'll say, like, oh, that's not the type we want. So they can just commit the no true Scotsman fallacy while getting mad at religious people for saying, you know, that person isn't the best example of a believer because they're breaking the open rules, right? And they don't study the deen or study the faith, so they're not the one to look to, and they're failing, but the actual doctrines say this, this, and that, and this is the expression variations of it. The atheists will go and critique all that, but then when it comes to their own philosophy, they use this sort of card of, oh, well, you can't call that atheistic because this isn't that. You know, you can't talk about atheism because this, and this. And you're like, that's strange. So France is falling because people are praying in public, but it's not falling because they have an Amsterdamish red light district aura that has lasted for hundreds of years. So they haven't fallen because of that, or when the Jacobins took over. No, it's simply because people are having public prayer. Okay. I think Macron is more of a sign of France falling than someone spending a few minutes to think about their existence and thank their creator for their existence and then go about their day. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just low clickbait. And if they're mad at Muslim praying in public, why do they not say anything when the Jews go to the Wailing Wall and they move back and forth? Or when they have that chicken and then they're killing the chicken because they believe they put their sins in it and they're killing it? Why don't they examine the Talmud? You know what I mean? It's just disingenuous, and that's what I don't appreciate. I don't appreciate people who will viscerally attack Islam, but then they selectively stay away from the actual powerful topics, you know? It's like criticizing the Pee-wees in the gang without talking about the OGs in the gang, you know? Talking about the doorman of a mafia instead of the mafia don. That's pretty much what these online Twitter accounts do when they attack Islam. It's quick money, and they never reach out to have a dialogue with Muslims. Like, has Jeremy from the Quartering ever reached out to any Muslim YouTuber, male or female, not that I know of, and said, hey, Tell me what your value system is. I do also notice that a lot of the ex-Muslims, they're becoming pro-Zionist and pro-Jew, but they claim to be humanists and they claim to be against religion. And I always found that interesting. It's like, what do they say about the Kabbalah? What do you got to say about that? Like, they'll make all sorts of excuses, but the thing is that the dominant group at the moment, they'll reward you and let you in, and you get a lot of money. And that's a powerful way to win the media game, is whoever has the money and you want to go work for them and get the gold pass, well, you just have to go with the group who is able to get you the most money. And Muslims right now, talking about them doesn't give you any money unless you're one of these pretty girls who cries on camera, on cue, like an actor when she hears the Quran, right? Or listens to a recitation from one of the top reciters. That's how some of these girls get famous. They're not even Muslim, but they're just like, let me do this. Like, you can get famous that way and make ad revenue that way, which is quite sad. I've seen that a lot, actually. Some pretty famous cases. I don't want to put anyone on blast, but even some men will be like P. Diddy mentioning Islam, like, I'm fasting during Ramadan. There is this sort of, if you want to make some money and get in with the Muslims, just say a couple nice things about Muslims. They'll flock to you, give you views, and then once you're done getting money and you can't milk them anymore, just move on to another topic and hope you have captured new members in your audience. It's a very slender game, but it's very apparent. And so there's those two functions of attack Islam or compliment Islam, and who are you going to make money off of. But those two strategies, you'll make money. And then there's the honest people in the bottom who don't get really promoted. You just kind of see how these algorithm machines that are working right now, it could change. You get a new CEO, get some new computer engineers, that could all change. But at the moment, like, the algorithm today wasn't the same 5 years ago. It's always changing, right? But at the moment, if you insult Islam, you're going to grow in a lot of views. If you're a Zionist, you're going to grow in a lot of views. If you mention, like Candace Owens, big example, right? If you start to go away from that narrative, you're fired. You're ostracized. You're going to have problems. But if you go to the side of, I like Islam, and they have this and they have that, and all of a sudden Muslims will want to see what you said, some will stay, some will go, but that addiction to watching the huge spike in views, okay, what can someone say next? What can someone say next? And then those videos keep feeding, and then people keep getting a bunch of views. And so this is an issue. But whenever someone says that Europe has fallen, Paris has fallen, simply because people are praying, you know they're a hypocrite, and you know they're just doing rage bait. Because you can't complain about public prayer and at the same time complain about public lewdness. Which is it? Which do you want? Which way, Western man? The woman selling her infested oyster on the street? Or religiosity being open and viewable to vulnerable youths who may not even be spiritual, right? People complain about fatherlessness and people having a lack of purpose, and them seeing public prayer can spark curiosity, right? So which is it? Which do you really want? Do you want solutions, or is this about money? And I feel like Jeremy from the Quartering, if he really was genuine, he would be seeking answers and proclaiming his religiosity. He doesn't have a channel based around religion. have never heard him quote scripture of the Bible, of any denomination's perspective. So, and I've also never heard him mention the racial points. He's not like the Nick Fuentes, Groypers, America First. So, what's going on here? And he is friends with Sydney Watson and Steven Crowder, who viscerally hate Muslims. Like, they hate us. They hate Islam. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's quite strange, isn't it? Steven Crowder LARPs as a Christian, has insulted us a lot. Sydney Watson hates Muslims because some brown guy touched her leg on a plane. She didn't even know if he's Muslim. She just assumed he was because he's brown. And, well, she never bothered to read the hadiths about how if it's better for you to, remove your hand than touch a woman you're not permitted to touch. She doesn't care to read about how the genders are to be segregated. Men and women shouldn't be alone together. Women should have male chaperones. Like, she doesn't read about the strict mode of how we're supposed to resist temptation from the opposite gender. So obviously in Islam, you're not allowed to just grope random women. She doesn't care about actually reading the doctrines, but a brown guy touched her on a plane, so now she's on a crusade to spread hatred and maliciousness towards Muslims in a time when we're heavily attacked and people are making money from it. So that's his circle. So he sees the analytics and says, Steven Crowder attacks Muslims, makes money. Sydney Watson gets money from it. I need money. People are not watching my content as much. So what do I need to do? Start talking about things I see on the whatever podcast, Fresh and Fit and the like, and then attack Islam. And that's the circle. That's what's popping right now. I cover topics that I really like, and, maybe 50 people see it. If I wanted to make money, or I become some super fancy TikToker, the blueprint is right there, but I'm not really into that. There's no point in being a floating parrot. That's what grifting is it's moving from the next trend to the next trend to the next trend in order to not fall off, right? And so I want every Muslim this Ramadan to keep doing what you're doing. Keep praying. We have to really try to unite the Ummah as much as possible. I know it's so difficult. I know it's hard. Some of us are going to disagree on things. We're going to have falling outs, but we need to have moments where we can be civil and get along, because the fact that people are making money from attacking us and they're being permitted to feed on us does show you where we are at the moment. And to the French Muslims, keep doing what you're doing. Stay strong. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we all need to keep the French Muslims in our prayers, because they are being targeted and harassed and hated. And I am so proud of the Muslim women in Paris who defy the hijab ban, and they wear their spiritual garments in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while a harlot can have her camel toe present and men lust and drool over it, and our women are covered. You're better than them, and you should not be forced to wear lewd clothing because atheistic Frenchmen want to gawk at you like a T-bone steak hanging in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Be steadfast. Allah is with you. You'll be rewarded for everything you're suffering. And props to everyone who is not shy to pray publicly. There's nothing wrong with public prayer. Stay healthy, stay strong, and may Allah bless you this Ramadan. If you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there.